Ladies and gentlemen, I'm stoked. I have the great and mighty legend Stephen Rosen again on my podcast. Guys, if you don't have this, his audiobook in particular, and you're a guitarist and you're interested in Eddie Van Halen, you must get it. I literally feel like I'm on a journey with Stephen and Ed. I've fallen asleep a couple of times listening to it at night when I'm so tired. I wake up, it's like 10 chapters ahead. But this audiobook, you can take literally a month to get through and taking about an hour a day. It is just so, I mean, it's like the book must be good, but the audiobook, you're hearing Ed's voice, you're hearing Stephen's voice. Stephen's jumping in, explaining some of the stuff that's going on, which is really helpful. It's a quality audio production on the likes of Dune, Battle for Arrakis on Audible. It's essential. There's nothing else like it in the world. Stephen, over to you.
Wow, Nikos, thank you, man. I mean, that was very generous, and really, what you said is really true. Maybe a bit hyperbolic, but I'm going to go with that at this point. But yes, it's funny because I always thought of audiobooks as sort of the kind of the poor man's version of a real hardback. I mean, I was a hardback guy. I mean, I was a magazine guy. I wanted to hold the magazine. I wanted to hold a book in my hand. And I always looked at audiobooks as like, well, you mean to tell me that you're not interested enough to hold the book and read the book and have it in your hands? But look, man, I realized we're in a digital age. People are busy. They're doing a lot of flying. They're in their cars a lot. And, I came to slowly understand that. And at a point in time, I thought, you know what? Let me seriously think about an audiobook. And so the first thought was, okay, there are probably I've never done an exact count, but there's probably about 40 or 50 hours of audio. All the interviews I did with Edward in the day, and I thought, my gosh, man, just to get those into an order, chronologically, what's there, that was daunting. And then my second thought was, okay, who can I get to narrate this? Because I thought, look, I wrote the words in the book, but I'm not a professional narrator. I just was unsure. I went online and I heard some of these narrations, some of these professional narrators, and they're fantastic. I mean, I get it, but I'm looking at my book and I'm thinking, I just didn't think I could find a narrator who was going to understand sort of who I was, who Edward Van Halen was, So then I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll narrate it. And then I thought, okay, I can narrate it. And then I thought, well, in my voice, I'm going to be narrating all of Edward's words and all the interviews. I thought, to me, it seems so strange. Look, a lot of these narrations in these books, in fiction books, it's a story, right? There's no it's not a question-answer interview going on. So it's much different when you have one voice speaking the whole book. I thought, no, that doesn't work. And that's when I thought, okay, what about if I actually embed the audiobook with all of these
Genius.
Original interviews? And that was the key. And that, honestly, man, that took about 8 or 9 months to put together. I had a very good friend, Adam Roach, in Australia, who cleaned all the audio and put it together. And now he had to intersperse my dialogue, which I did here in town. I live in Orange County, California, near Disneyland. So I found a little studio over here where I would go and do my narrations. But then, it would come to a point and Edward would talk. But then, it might be my voice again, or just a straight interviews where it's my question answer. I mean, it was a lot of work on my engineer out here, on Adam's part. And we finally got it together. And seriously, it was about 8 or 9 months. And I think the audiobook is about 20 hours plus. And I think it's fantastic. And as you mentioned, Nikos, look, I'm very proud of the book, but what took me 5 pages to describe about Edward talking about something or the mood he was in, you hear it. You hear his voice. Oh, Edward's happy. Oh, Edward's sad. Oh, Edward's upset. Oh, Edward's talking about the band. And it's right there. And the fact that so much of this, well, all of it is archival, dating back to 78. So it's not like interviews he did later or in the 90s. To me, the real magic of him was sort of stuff from back in the day. So, yeah, man, that was the birth of the Tonechaser audiobook.
I'm just on you absolutely made the right choice by putting your personal audio on top of it, because it makes it much more interesting, and it's so great just hearing Ed's voice. The thing that's difficult is like the longer I'm listening to this, it's such a journey of a story that I'm really starting to get attached to Ed, and then he's not here. It's hard, It's like that, man. This guy. I'm at this chapter today where you were talking just after the chapter on Al, and I've still got about 2/3 to go through. I don't think it's 20 hours. I think it's like 60 hours, man. But I see where the 8 months comes from. It's so interesting as a guitarist, someone who loves the guitar. I mean, I literally can't. Every spare minute that's not involved with family and work and everything, I'm trying to learn just my version of what I want to play. He was that chapter about. Ed's talking about his first guitar and how he didn't really like playing the music from violin. He liked to play his own music, and I understand him myself, because like at school I played clarinet all the way through school, and I'm always playing. I never improvised. I always playing this sheet music, and it got to the age of 37 before I picked up a guitar and realized I could improvise. So like I'm kicking myself a little bit, but I'm putting the time in now. That's very cool. I mean, everybody always asks, well, could Edward read? No, Edward couldn't read. Could Edward read? I think Edward, because he did take piano early on, I think he could sort of read. He recognized chord changes going by. Could he read, very obscure, more difficult music? I don't think so. But yeah, he early on that was not what he was going to do. I mean, that's what the parents wanted him to do, and his father being a jazz guy and obviously read, very well. But that wasn't in the works for Edward and Al, and then he famously talks about the Dave Clark Five. He loved them. Hearing that stuff and the Beatles and wanted to go off and do his own thing and not be sort of tied to reading music and doing that classical thing. But I think that doing that classical stuff obviously informed his playing, and obviously we hear it. His keyboards obviously jump, and his left and right hand. I mean, he's pretty adept. He's not an amazing keyboard player, but he's a very good keyboard player, And I think also listening, he probably was listening to classical music. So his songwriting is pretty amazing. And, not that it's classically oriented, but he obviously had an incredible command of, harmony and weaving in and out of keys and stuff. And so, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to get back into the keyboard. I'm thinking of ways on how I can attach a keyboard to my guitar. There's a Roland S1 that's come out. Oh. So, like, I'm thinking of getting the keyboard and sticking on the guitar like that, and then I'll be able to pluck in this hand and also play some chords.
Dude, that is an amazing idea.
Yeah. So I went in to try the Roland S1, which is about half that size, but it's got the top bank is full of synthesizer knobs, and it's just too kind of awkward. So, and the keys are really small. They're like the size of a Skittle. So like. And the thing is, you can get like synthesizer pedals for the guitar that sound like a synth when you play it. So I'm thinking like At some point, I will try it when I've got money to burn on like this, and I've got a sound engineer who's willing to mic up two instruments when I'm focused on one or not. But
yeah,
it's an idea, because like a lot of the music that's sort of timeless has a keyboard in it, like Jump and Final Countdown and some of these songs. There's something about having a synth as well as the this typical rock instruments.
I agree, and I had a conversation actually with somebody yesterday. Actually, Liz Allman, who was Greg Allman's daughter from the Allman Brothers, actually has a podcast, and we were talking, and I think one of her questions was, or was going to be, I'm actually doing the podcast tomorrow.
Great.
Do you think that had Edward still been alive, would he have sort of maybe gotten into writing for a film and that kind of thing? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. But that sort of peripheral response to what you said about having keyboards in a band, it's an entirely different texture than having a second guitar player, right? Yeah. I mean, obviously keyboards can do so much that a guitar can't. I always thought it would have been interesting had Edward found a singer who was a keyboard player. I'm not discounting what Sammy did, but maybe there would have been another singer after Gary Sharon. Trying to think about singing keyboard players. I mean, I don't know. I mean, somebody like Steve Winwood. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but to have Edward playing over keyboard changes, I thought could have been just amazing. So
I think keyboard requires a real specialization, and a lot of keyboard players, they're not into that kind of rock music. They're just classically trained and they can't improvise, and so they lose a lot of that. There's so many classical piano players, they can't improvise at all, I've heard. Prince is probably the exception, the only one I can think of. I don't even know if he was classically trained, but he could play a really high standard off keyboard. He did his last tour with a keyboard and a mic. Maybe that guy from Dream Theater. Yeah, I don't listen to Dream Theater music, so.
Yeah. Jordan Rudess.
It's quite funny. I had somewhere in one of your interviews that Ed was talking about keyboard joined to a guitar, and Jordan's made one. It's like a full keyboard on a full guitar, but Ed's like that. Don't play a sitar or something. He just get a proper keyboard, and that's how Ed did it. But,
yeah. I think I asked Ed once about a synth guitar, way back in the day. I forget Syntax, right? And there's a couple of them, a Roland. I don't think that interested him, though.
Yeah, I don't see the point of it, because the keyboard is very static. You can't get any variability, or there's an infinite amount of harmonics on a string. It's just infinite. It's just
yeah.
You never play the string the same way twice. Like a piano. So
very true.
I mean, you can play the guitar like a piano. It's just very taxing on your fingers and a lot harder than I think if I put the piano on the guitar, then I'll have to be really good at my tapping, and then I can play both at once, like a bass. I'm definitely going to do it. It's,
yeah, man, sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm almost thought about Panama, probably. My fingers aren't warmed up, I'll get moved off the stage. Yeah. Cool. Like I'm learning some muted chord shapes, like doing like a, and change into like another one. It's just so much work, man, to get better, like you get to a certain level and it's like you got to do this thing 3-4 hours a day consistently, and you take a couple of days break and your fingers just don't play what your brain wants to do. It's not a natural thing to play the guitar. And that's why you just realize the dedication of these players, like Ed, and there's people that do it full time,
Yeah, absolutely. The 10,000 hours thing. Edward probably spent 100,000 hours,
Yeah, but it's not like something like a mental skill that you can regurgitate. It's a 10,000 hours plus the maintenance of what you already have to keep the muscles, fresh. So it's like there's almost no second plan with somebody like Ed, because that you're so specialized on the one thing that it would take you so long to retrain to do anything else professionally. Like if you injure your hand or you can't play, then what do you do,
Yeah. Yeah, I get it, And I think the other thing that you're talking about maintaining what you've learned, that only happens in a live setting. I think you can sit in your room and sound great, and you get out there with other musicians and the volume and the whole thing. I think it's an entirely different animal. And Edward was playing live when he was, playing around when he was very early, and all those club dates and stuff. So,
where's the motivation to play by yourself the whole time and just make YouTube videos? I don't see it. Like, and if I play music somewhere and people just don't even see you're playing, they don't recognize the music, not appreciate it, it feels very lonely. So I love to play on stage and people enjoy what I'm playing. I'm going to Ukraine for 4 days and I'll be playing there probably. I love playing in Ukraine. Just kind of playing the solo lead on top of like folk music and music I don't understand what the words are and stuff like that.
Well, I'm sorry, Nikos. You say you were playing in Ukraine?
Yeah. I'm going to Ukraine for 4 days. Yeah.
Wow, that's unbelievable. What was that like?
I've been doing it a couple of years. That's what got me into it. There was I go to this church there, and there was a bass guitar lying around, and I finally had to learn the notes, because before I just was learning patterns and that was just a waste of memory, because you learn it in one key, you can't play in any other key. So in the bass guitar, I learned the first string, and then I learned the fourth string, or vice versa, and then I realized I could actually remember what the notes were. And then they had an electric guitar there, and I tried that one night, and I actually could play a lead on top of the chord changes, and I was like, that just completely unlocked it for me, because I'd given up guitar from the age of 21 till about the age of 36, because I was just I never paid for a coach, and I was, the first books that I'd learned, they didn't teach me to learn what the notes were. They just show me these shapes, and I'd learned this shape, but then I couldn't reuse it I learned it on the A minor pentatonic. But then I was doing all these backing tracks, and then I was trying to solo on top of them, but then I didn't know where all the notes were. But as soon as I learned the notes, and it's a bit intimidating at the start, it completely unlocked the instrument from me. So I wasted, 16 years when I could have been learning guitar properly.
Wow.
That's a regret I have.
However you get there, I suppose.
There's just not enough time in the day to practice that, but I do like practicing. I don't get bored at all playing. I learned Child's Theme song. It's not fresh in my mind, but the Toto theme. That's a really simple theme. I'm really enjoying playing that. That's so easy to play. It's just an ascending major scale,
Mm-hmm.
But like in Ukraine, I normally just turn on the Tero Echo lead, and anything you play, even if it's one note, it's just like, because there's a full band there, right? It just sounds so good, like trying to make a guitar solo sound good with other instruments is difficult, though. That's beyond me at the moment. So in your book, I'm amazed at how humble you are. You're just like every single, and I agree with what you're saying, but Ed, of course, is so relaxed, but you'll ask a question like, I don't know, like, did you like the tour or something like that? And you come in and say, what was I thinking? You had him on such a high pedestal, but he was obviously not on that pedestal, so he doesn't care if you ask him a question that's not fit for a king.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was infinitely harder on myself than Edward ever was. And when I started writing the book, um, I'm sitting there, and as you sort of touched on earlier, Nikos, I mean, I really wanted you to be there with me, and hanging out with Edward. I wanted you to feel all that. So it took a lot of description, details. And so, I would write, and I'm going, yeah, people are getting it, but there's still something missing. And then I thought, well, what if there was this guy who was looking down from above who was way smarter than this Steve Rosen guy, and he could really see what was going on, and he was really honest about it, And that's when I started doing this, what I call my notes section, and trying to be clever, and half notes and quarter notes and blue notes and calling them different things. And in those sections, that's where this person looks down and goes, Rosen, that was the stupidest question you've ever asked. How could you ask that? Asking Edward if he thought he was playing well in 1978? What? He was only setting the world on fire. Why would you ask that?
That's a human question. That's how Ed played. He played human. He left mistakes in because it says it doesn't sound real, right? If you just do overdubs and everything. And that's what, like sometimes you listen to some album, I won't name the album, it sounds amazing, right? And then you listen to them play live and you're like, but you didn't play this crazy guitar solo with your riff at the same time, it sounds like a different song.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first Zeppelin record, there are mistakes all over it, but it's still one of the greatest. I mean, the accents, they go to accents at different times anyway. There's this section that I call notes, and me commenting on this Steve Rosen guy and the interaction. And as I'm writing it, I'm going, are people going to get this? Are they going to understand it? I've never read it before. I've never heard anybody ever do it. I thought, well, I think it's a pretty cool little device. And so, I kind of went with it, and, people responded to that, like you commented, me responding to myself, and I'm extraordinarily critical of stuff I do, always have been. But, I think people look at it and they get more out of the situation, and that even draws them more into the story.
Yeah, but you were just talking to him like you're asking questions like a friend would ask. You're not like this guy who's going in to interview the king and you have 10 minutes and you have to, or interview Tom Cruise and you have 5 minutes and you must perfectly practice every syllable, or the Scientology are going to come and whip you with a broom or something like that,
Yeah.
And like you said, the kind of questions that you asked, and you appealed to Ed. You weren't just like fawning as a sycophant around him, and that's one of the reasons why he was your friend, because you made him feel like normal. You didn't come in and just like a deer in the headlights,
I that was a huge part of it, and I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that I met him eight months, before that first record comes out. And on top of that, I had never heard him play when I first met him. So, had I been aware of that, even maybe our first conversation would have been a little bit different. And again, I write about this. By the time I met Edward, July 1977, that night at the Whiskey, I'd been writing for about 4 years, So, I'd interviewed Jeff Beck and John McLaughlin and John Entwistle and Joe Walsh, and, I'd been around some pretty remarkable guitar players. So it's not like, even if I'd heard Edward, I wouldn't have thought, oh my God, the dynamic would have been different between us, but I don't think that I would have been fawning a lot. Maybe I would have, because I mean, after the fact, and, he goes out on the road, and the first record comes out, the second record comes out, and I realized, he was changing everything, and all of the response he was getting, and all the acclaim. But yeah, I tried to never be that person, because he really was uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
You hear questions today, and there was one I forgot some interview, and they asked him, "What does it feel like being a guitar hero, guitar guy?"
Man, get lost, man.
You know, he didn't need to hear that.
I hate that
knew who he was.
Guitar God, man. What the heck?
Yeah.
Guitar God. It means it's useless. Two words together. I know.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But yeah, he was pretty remarkable. I mean, he was truly a humble kind of a person, you know. And I mean, beyond that, he just, and I write about it, and it was really critical with him. It was all about respect. And you know, you sit there and go, "Oh man, you're the fucking best, you're the fucking greatest," you know, and this and that, you know. Yeah, it's respect of another kind, but it's so overboard. It really doesn't mean anything, because the truth of it is, he could have gone up there and played the worst gig that any guitar player's ever played. Not that he ever did, and they still would have said, "Oh my gosh, Edward, you're the freaking greatest." You know what I mean? So that meant nothing to him. You respected him, and he respected you. Now, if you disrespected him, that was something that he did not forget. You know, and he held on to that for a long time. So, and fair enough, I guess. You know,
I think the greatest musicians, the strength that they have is that they don't do it for fame or money. Fred just loved to play it, and I think if there's any musicians watching this and you're worried about like making it or not, it shouldn't affect your love for the instrument. You should, regardless of who watches you, whatever, if you like playing the instrument itself, that's a win. Who cares if you never make any money from it, right? But the thing is, if you have that passion,
I'm sorry, Nikos. Yeah, no, that's very true. It's absolutely true. It's one thing to say that, and it's one thing to believe it, and it's another thing to actually inhale that and be that person when you're out there on, you know, playing in a club with, you know, 4 people and 3 of them are your buddies. It's a hard thing to do. I was thinking about what is the common denominator of all of these guitar players that I've interviewed, you know, over these past decades, you know, and the common thread is exactly what you said. Not one of these people has ever said, "Man, I was playing in clubs and we played at 10 people and, you know, I was going to quit." They may have said that, but they never quit. You know, and every band that you can think of, I mean, the classic bands, the bands who are still around, you know, Aerosmith and U2, I mean, they all started in playing to 3 people, you know, but with them, there was nothing else. And that's the other thing. I don't know if any of them ever had like a second job. Oh, if that doesn't work, I'm going to do this. Now, they may have had a second gig to be able to put new strings on the guitar and put gas in the van. Edward now went out and painted curves, but I don't think that Edward ever seriously thought that he was going to go work for the city painting curves. You know what I mean? So it's not like these guys had something to fall back on. It's not like they were continuing in school. A lot of them dropped out of school. All of those English guys, you know, they all went to art school, which is kind of like you know, they sat there, you know, painting all day, but most of them dropped out of art school to pursue music. So yeah, man, it is that. Not one of those guys ever said to me, unless it was in jest, "Yeah, man, I wanted to be a guitar player to make money and meet women."
Yeah.
Look, at the end of the day, that's a byproduct if fame comes to you and, you know, well earned. But yeah, not one person, "Yeah, man, I thought I was going to make a lot of money playing guitar." Are you kidding me? You know, it's like actors. There's probably in the Actors Guild, I think it's like 0.5% of the actors make up for like all the money that's generated by all these actors, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna be an actor, you're doing it because you love it. You're gonna play guitar, you can play drums or bass because you truly love it, and you can't conceive of anything else. It takes a rare person, man. It's not an easy thing to do, and you know. So my hat's off to those kinds of people that have that diligence and focus and drive, you know. I played guitar back in the day. You know, I was never a great guitar player. I was okay.
You were playing some
You know,
good stuff, man, and I heard you play some stuff on that, and Ed's like, "You're a really good guitarist."
oh please, you know. But I thought I could be a songwriter because I thought I was a decent songwriter, but I was not willing. I was not willing to you know, weigh it against the other side of that. Well, what if I can't pay my rent this month, or what if I'm late on the gas bill, you know? And for some reason, I just couldn't make that leap, you know? So the music journalism, which was always there from the beginning, was sort of like the default thing, you know? I don't know, man. So people who can do that, and they put all those hours in, and they find fame, success on some level, man, I have nothing but tremendous respect for it, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. What do you think the sort of modern, well-known guitarists from like the 80s and 90s and continuing are thinking of the music industry as it stands now? There seems to be a lot of negativity out there, like that all the money's been taken up with streaming and, you know, all sorts of reasons. What do you think they would say is good and bad about today, and what are they saying?
As difficult as it was to make a life for yourself as a musician back in the days of record companies and, you know, signing these contracts and you know, hoping to make money and get records out, as difficult as that was, I think it's 1,000 times more difficult today. The internet was obviously an incredible tool to come along. Musicians could now record on their own, you know, they didn't have to foot the bill for a big studio. But what it also did was it made, because it leveled the playing ground, every person who ever picked up a guitar fancied himself, you know, a great musician and put his music out there. And look, everybody has that right to do that, but just sheer number, it's now infinitely more difficult to find what appeals to you, you know, the stuff that really has some merit. And I'm not going to be the arbiter of what that is, but it's just infinitely more difficult. A band now, really their main source of income is touring. And if you're a new band, you know, you pack the guys in a van and go play regional gigs if you can get them, and hope to make enough money to, you know, pay for meals and gas. It's really difficult. I think that streaming and, you know, MP3s, as much as I understand it, I think that it's totally devalued music in a big way. You can now go out and find anything for free. So why would I go pay for an album when I can go wait and you know, stream it on Spotify or YouTube or whatever? Music has really become disposable. I don't know what good there is. Look, obviously some bands have sprung from the digital thing and have put out little, you know, CDs on their own, or had their own pages and been able to translate that. I don't know. I'm not sort of in tune with those kinds of bands. It just seems like an incredibly difficult journey to take for a new band, you know. And on the other side of that, for fans as well. I mean, look, it's great. You know, you want a new Aerosmith record, you don't have to go buy the new Aerosmith record. Live performances is something else. Concert tickets have gotten insane. I don't know how you afford a concert ticket. yeah, and I hate to sound so negative about it. I don't want to be. I'm just thinking, if you were a band coming out today and let's say you were a great band, let's say you were the next Aerosmith or Van Halen or U2, what would you do? What would you do? Would you reach out to the labels? I mean, would you promote yourself on your own website? Um, uh, I don't know. You'd like to think that the cream always rises to the top. Well, it doesn't. Um, um, I think that there are a lot of bands that will never get noticed, that have never been noticed. A lot of great guitar players. Um, we cool here, Nikos?
We're good. We're good. My lights just died on me, but we can do with.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I don't know, man. I suppose if you grow up in this digital age and you're used to that, and that's the norm, then you think, okay, well, what do I have to do to stand out from everybody else? Um, you know, Obviously, what a label provided back in the day was promotion and marketing and tours. At least they put the bill up front. You had to pay it all back, but at least they made it possible for you to go out and play on the road. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess the real test is there a band that has come out in the last 10 or 20 years that we will be talking about in 50 years, the way that we're talking about Van Halen?
I don't think so, man. I don't think so.
You know, which isn't to say there are some great bands out there. I mean, again, it's outside of my bailiwick. You know, I tend not to listen to those bands. I tend to go back to all the classic bands, that I loved growing up, and Jeff Beck and The Who and Cream and Hendrix and Traffic. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I follow some YouTubers and I won't name names. I watch them for learning guitar t techniques, but then from when I watch them on stage, it's like big deal, like they're doing a tour, but like I'm not feeling inspired by watching them stand still and play some licks with a GoPro or something like that. It doesn't do anything for me. Like I'd rather watch the performances of old in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. It's opera. I think a lot of successful bands nowadays, it's almost like theater as well as music. There has to when you're playing these songs, you have to be running around and doing stuff, man. You can't just stand still. It's a physical thing. You should
Right. I
stretch for
mean,
2 hours before playing the guitar on stage. So you do the splits, and damage your knee afterwards. But it's theater.
yeah, man. I mean, I don't watch the Grammys. I really never did. But I mean, are there any rock bands up there? I mean, it's all, Beyonce. Does she deserve that success? I'd be the last one to say so. But, all those kinds of artists, play the Super Bowl. You know, Taylor Swift. I mean, she outsells the Beatles. She's actually a very, very, very gifted artist. But would that have happened pre-internet downloads? Look, she would have been huge, probably. But so I don't know. I'm not trying to put those artists down at all. Obviously, they've had remarkable success, but yeah, it's just a different world. Same thing with music journalism. There aren't a lot of magazines now that use freelancers. So you come out of journalism school and you want to write about music, and well, you tend to do it on your own site. A lot of music sites, none of them pay. So I don't know. Just a different world.
You know where I think the music scene is doing best? In churches. That's where you're seeing live music. That's where I play live music. I was talking to a musician got a cover band, I gave him my guitar. I put him up on YouTube, and like he just played Panama much better than I can play. And I was practicing the bass guitar in the music store here in Austria, and he came in and found me, and then he picked up the bass, started playing Jaco Pastorius, The Chicken, just off the cuff. I was just like, but I was asking him, man, how much do you get paid for doing gigs here in Austria? You know, it's like we talking. We have to pay the venue to now go play there. So it's not, it's
Right.
double bad. You're not getting paid by the venue to come there and basically be an alcohol salesman, which is what Bad Brad says. I mean, I'm not, I don't feel myself an alcohol salesman, but you don't get the venue free. You pay to use
Yeah.
the venue to play your music.
Right.
I'm like, what?
Pay
I'm
pay to
shocked, man.
play.
Yeah,
Pay to play.
not even free venue, or not even getting paid. You're
No.
paying to play in front of people. That's how bad it is, man. That's the disrespect people have for musicians nowadays.
It is. It is. You know, when you watch a movie, what are the last names always listed on the credits? The freaking musicians, the songwriter, and
Really?
if it's
Yeah.
a big time composer, he might be a little higher up the list, but it's always at the very end. You know, yeah, music has always, in some respects, been disposable unless you were a successful band. So it's just gotten more difficult for sure. Unfortunately, will that turn around? I don't know. Some great band out there who does it organically, and they go record a record analog on tape, and there's a huge groundswell.
I watched a video that says that guitar sales are going up since the pandemic or pandemic, depending on where you aim.
Yeah,
Um, the Guitar Hero, the guitar sales are up. So like, if guitar sales are up, that means more people are interested in guitar. Maybe there's a second wave coming.
maybe. It's an interesting question. I go to the NAMM show every year, which is the National Association of Music Merchants or Merchandisers. I can never remember. I think merchants.
National Association of
Which is
Music.
where all the guitar makers come to show their new line, and drum companies and keyboards. I mean, anything to do with music.
Music
And there's
manufacturers,
a
I think. Music manufacturers.
manufacturer.
Yeah.
And there's a huge section devoted to DJs, right? And there's a huge section devoted to all the digital, gizmos for podcasts. That's become a thing. And yes, I see it. There are a lot of guitars still being sold, which is encouraging. I love to see that. So yeah, you wonder, well, who's buying those guitars? Just people who want to learn the guitar, or so yeah, maybe somewhere out there somebody's woodshedding and has that magic thing, and we'll turn it
Yeah,
around.
I love teaching people the guitar when I've got a guitar on
Mm.
me. If I've learned something new, and I find another guitarist, I'm teaching them what I've learned, and because I'm saving them a lot of time because I know that if I'm teaching them something, they're going to learn it 20 times faster and be embedded in their mind versus watching some YouTube video where they might learn something up. But if someone sits there and shows you and watches you play it, and then you play it and you make a mistake and you're like, now do it like this, and you show them, they will never forget that lesson.
Hmm.
I think that's a
Yeah.
duty of everyone who loves their instrument is to pass it on because so many people we know, they buy a guitar, sits in their corner like myself, and it doesn't get you played for 20 years. This Jackson that I have that I love now, I bought it on Gumtree for like crazy price, like a quarter of the retail price, and then I had it for like a year, and then I tried to sell it for less than I bought it for. Nobody wanted to buy it. I'm so glad I didn't buy it because it's a Japan-made Seymour Duncan Jackson. It's just people need the spark, and if there's not people going around with the spark, I mean, are those well-known guitarists, do any of you know out there are promoting just teaching the guitar and getting the next lot of musicians to dedicate their lives to the instrument?
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, that being said, I mean, there are some really good guitar players teaching, and I mean, honestly, I think that's one of the positive aspects of the internet. Instead of now having to go seek out a teacher. And yes, there's nothing like sitting there in a room, with a teacher right there with you. I get that. But short of that, I mean, there's some really good guitar players out there who love teaching and they're good at it. So I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing. A lot of these guys have devoted a lot of time, and so I mean, I watch some of that stuff. I'll never play like that, and it bothers me that I'm so bad, and everybody I watch is so good. But you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to work on my picking technique. There's some videos that talk about only downstrokes, and then you get this consistent sound. But then
Uh,
I don't know if that'd be fast enough to do. There's some cool stuff I'm trying to do, like the pan muting the chords and then playing a melody on top of it, which is sort of like almost like fingerstyle with a plectrum. It's like, oh, I don't know if this is possible. But
mhm.
fingerstyle, I also play a bit of fingerstyle. I'm trying to do some backing tracks, some sort of computer games, convert it to fingerstyle, but then it just takes so long to arrange. And the ear training, um, you're always trying to when you're trying to play like a video game, you're trying to do the pick as many parts of the song, the bass, the melody, the chords, and then you're like, you have to sacrifice something on the guitar or play one thing at a time. And you play the bass and jump to the melody. It's like,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That down picking thing. That's uh, all those metal guys have that down. All down picking, which is that's a man. My hats off to those guys. That's not an easy thing to do. With at that speed that they play at.
yeah.
So pretty cool.
I listened to them in your audiobook. You were saying that a lot of the guys were trying to fill something in them that they didn't have, and they were filling it with drugs and stuff like that. Why do you think that musicians have a tendency to want to have something filled that can't be filled?
That's a good question. I mean, the other side of that, yeah, is why? Yeah, why do musicians take drugs? You think that we look from the outside and they seem to have everything we want. If you're a would-be musician, you look at
Yeah.
you know
Like,
Joe
what's the root
Perry.
cause? What's the root cause of that? You think that if they're happy with your career, you wouldn't want to take drugs? I mean, I've seen successful people, they're not taking drugs and damaging themselves.
Um, you know, Look, I think I think the thing about musicians is it gets publicized so much. But I'll tell you, I will bet you. Well, I wouldn't bet on it, but I'm sure that drug use is rampant uh, in movies. Actors and actresses. I don't know. I mean, is it rampant in sort of those executives who run huge companies? I guess my point is I don't I think it has something to do with the creative aspect of it. That do creative people take drugs? I mean, it goes back a long time. I mean, all those writers. I mean, John Steinbeck was my favorite writer. I think he's the greatest ever lived. He was a raging alcoholic. Did he need to drink to create like that? Edward, tried to get sober many times and, go out and play a gig and said he was terrified. People said, well, it's because he was kind of a shy guy and, he came over to this country. I don't think that was it. Um, I honestly don't know. I think that they just do it and they love the feeling of it. Um, and also what tends to happen is they the addiction begins, or actually it probably begins before they become famous, but after they become famous, they now have the wherewithal and the money and access to get messed up all the time, and they can spend all the money they want on drugs and alcohol and pills. I think that trait was always in them, and just becoming musicians exacerbates it. Why? I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
If you look at like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, they don't seem like they look pretty good shape for in their 60s or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Steve is like a macrobiotic diet guy. I mean,
Oh, that's good.
yeah, I doubt if he even eats red meat. Yeah, Joe is amazing. Um, uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anybody can really answer that other than the band themselves, other than the musician themselves. Um,
Do,
weird,
do,
weird though. I
do you
mean,
think like a lot of there is a tendency though that quite a lot of the rock stars are trying to prolong the youth by going out there and doing the gigs like they're in their 20s and 30s with the tight leather and all that stuff in it. You feel like it kind of detracts from their legacy by them trying to prolong as they get older or too much.
I mean, I understand that, but I think that's all they know how to do.
Yeah,
Mick Jagger's 80 or 81, and he's still playing. It's like,
yeah,
does that band sound anything like what it sounded like in '66? Doubtful.
yeah,
But people who are Stones fans or have never seen the Stones, it doesn't matter.
yeah, yeah,
Sing Jagger and Richards up there. Do they think about their own legacy? I doubt it. Obviously it's not money. Those guys don't need money. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
there's a lot of those guys are out there playing into their 70s and 80s. Part of me thinks, yeah, it's cool. Part of me thinks, my God, if you've seen that band back in the day, there's no way you'd go see them now. But
it's hard to come off the stage high as bad Brad puts it, and I do love to play in front of people and seeing people the feedback. It's like if people smiling at what you're playing, and you can go back to being like a normal person with them afterwards. It's great, I understand it's like even if you're playing for one person, they're enjoying what you're playing, and they start going crazy in front of you for like I'm not talking about the woman, I'm talking about just like in Scotland, I'm playing a guitar and some what you call a Ned, a non-educated delinquent. He's drunk or something like that, and he's like, "Yeah, this is awesome, man. Yeah, I remember that. I'll remember that the rest of my life."
you bring up a good point. I don't think a lot of musicians know how to turn it off when they come off the stage.
Yeah,
I think actually that's a huge part of it. Yeah, man, you play in front of that many people. I mean, my God, you must feel like king of the world. I mean, the power and it just must be incredibly intoxicating stuff. And maybe, the only way you can get back there is, drinking or drugs or, I don't know. Edward, um, I can tell you the first two tours is when he was happiest. Um, Edward always seems so natural on stage, but I don't know if he necessarily, I never heard him say, oh man, what a drag it was going on the road. But I don't think he necessarily loved being on the road. I think he just assumed be, at home writing. Was he able to shut that thing off? I don't know. His he got worse over the years, and it's pretty public about that. Um, Maybe that's part of it. I've talked to some guys. They said, "My God, I'm off the road for a month. I don't know what to do." You know, um,
what do they do?
I don't know. I mean, it's like normal, day to day stuff. Even if they were married, um, uh, you know, I can't remember who it was who had the conversation. I just don't know what to do. I can't wait to get back on the road.
Do you think it's a
And
lack of
maybe it's
like
not that.
normal? Yeah, sorry, on you go.
Yeah. So and it may not be because they love to be on the road, but because that's what's in the DNA. That's what they do. They go on the road. They come back and record a record. Um, so I don't know. On the
Yeah,
other side of that,
I've never been on the road myself, so I couldn't.
yeah, I mean, on the other side of that, I think being in a rock and roll band who's able to tour and make records is the greatest gig in the world. So it's not like I have a lot of sympathy for those guys. It's like, hey, figure it out. I've never said that to anybody, but I mean, part of me understands it. I mean, you go on the road. I mean, especially for a more successful band, you're playing in front of a lot of people every night, and then it just ends. I don't know. I don't know. I would think that you would get used to that. Obviously, a lot of guys don't. And I think, in answer to your original question, I think that's part of it. I think on the road, maybe they don't get as messed up because they do have gigs to play and, they got to do a radio broadcast the next day. I don't know. But
I understand the bug. When I'm in Ukraine, I'm trying to play every day. Like, I'll just take the guitar with me. I'll play every single opportunity. I just absolutely love it, man. Just playing for people. I love it. I love it.
That's great. I mean, that's
I get nervous, of course, like everybody else. But if Eddie Van Halen got hurt and nervous, then then it's okay to be nervous, right? It's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if Edward has talked about making those little mistakes on record and then leaving them in there. And he says, "Yeah, man, I don't know how. I have to learn my thing again. I don't know how to play it like that. The mistake." I think mistakes are great. That's why I love all those. I think back, the records that I love. Not that they were mistakes necessarily. Well, yeah, there was some blatant mistakes. Some of them were, you listen to the tempos of those records. My God, those Zeppelin and Who records. Keith Moon. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, his tempo was all over the place, but that's what made those records so great. And then everything got digitized, and you're playing to a click, which is not a bad thing.
I don't get that click then. I don't get it. Why play to a click? What's the point? You got a drummer. That's what drummers for, man.
Yeah, or correcting every note, putting it in place. And that's why a lot of that stuff I cannot listen to. It's just hard because it's so up and down. The thing about Edward and his playing is that it had swing, and it was kind of loping, and that's what all those bands had back in the day. So I don't know, man. I hate to grouse about everything other than those bands I love, but I want to hear another band that I love as much as those bands, but we all grow up in an era, and I truly believe that the stuff you grow up listening to becomes, sort of your favorite music. It's not a hard and fast rule. And certainly you're capable of hearing other stuff down the road that you love, but I mean, I can't think of a record made past, and I'm being generous, 1975 that I love as much as the records that came before. Not saying there weren't great records, and Supertramp, and I mean, I had a bunch of, bands I love that did records after that. But I don't know, man. Just a different thing, different world.
So have you got any more interviews planned that you're going to interview some of the guys, upcoming guys or guys they've interviewed before?
Honestly, Nikos, I haven't really done an interview. It's been about 5 years now. I sort of semi-retired. Yeah.
Okay.
It got to a point, and we sort of touched on this before. If you don't absolutely love what you're doing, and you're willing to do it for free and not make any money, then don't do it anymore, because people will sense that in a heartbeat. They'll jump on you and tear you apart. It got to a point where, and I'm not saying it got bad or acute, but I would find myself just not being sort of excited about doing an interview. And the last probably 10 or 15 years I did interviews, they were all, maybe even longer, they were all phoners, which is a completely different dynamic. So I didn't even have to leave the house. But I'm not saying that they weren't good interviews, but there's something about sitting across a table from somebody, and I can see his expressions, and The point being, I just felt like it doesn't mean to me what it meant to me back in the day, sitting there and talking with Gary Moore or Peter Frampton or Nicky Hopkins or, these musicians that I loved, whose records I owned, you know. So I thought, hey, now it's time to, let's sort of ease out of it, And I knew that, I hate to use the word retirement because I still wrote the book, about 4 or 5 years after I had sort of retired. But I knew that sort of easing away for me was going to be kind of I was working on Friday and Monday I'm not working anymore. I still sort of, I'm involved in music stuff and, got a YouTube channel together, but it just didn't hold for me what it did back in the day. And, the music guys I was interviewing, a lot of metal guys, a lot of great guitar players, it just didn't do it for me. And there were some great interviews in there. I interviewed Ian Pace, who I'd never interviewed, from drummer from Purple, and there were some great interviews. I just sort of been there and kind of everybody I kind of wanted to talk to, I did, except Eric Clapton. He's the one that got away. I never interviewed Eric. Keith Richards would have been amazing, but that was like a pipe dream, But so, it's really, the book came out in 2021, the first edition. And since 2021, it's really been concentrating on the book, trying to learn a little bit about social media, which still befuddles me. I have no idea how Facebook works. And if I put up a post, who's going to see it, who doesn't see it? Thank goodness I have a couple guys who help me. Again, mentioned my friend Adam Roach in Australia, helps me with my YouTube page, and my good friend Chris Bello helps me with Facebook and Instagram. YouTube page has been pretty interesting. A lot of the interviews that I did back in the day, I put up there. So there's some pretty fantastic interviews up there.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's cool, man. For a long time, I had this proprietary thing. Hey, I'm not going to share with you. Those are my interviews. That's my life. And you're not going to hear them, And then over the years, I thought, hey, you know what? Not everybody has access to hear Jimmy Page from 1977 or 1986. And I thought, maybe fans would get something out of it. And that was sort of the mindset. After that,
there's nothing like it. These interviews, and there's nothing like it, man. I'm so happy you did it.
Yeah.
It's great for your for your whatever you're doing now and your legacy,
Yeah, and legacy would be great. If after I'm gone, if I'm remembered for 3 minutes afterwards, that's great. But I do have all these fantastic interviews, that happened early on in a lot of these artists' careers. There's not a lot of that stuff around. So yeah, man, the idea of putting it up on YouTube and sharing that stuff means a lot to me. And hopefully people like you, listen and get something from it. So that's mainly what I concentrate on, the book, YouTube, and, putting up posts and, getting pictures with the guitar players with the book and, trying to spread the word, podcasts, which I love doing actually. So yeah, all good.
Cool, man. So any tips from myself as I'm trying to interview more musicians as well. I'm looking at Vienna bands coming in, I message them and they never get back to me. But I guess once the ball starts rolling.
Yeah, no. Again, man, it's like be persistent. And if you don't hear from them, write them again and reach out and say, hey, man, I've got a podcast and I love what you do. And yeah, 500 people will see it or 30 people will see it. It doesn't matter. You have to, you just keep reaching out to them. Hey, man, I love your music. I know about your music. I play guitar. I'd like to talk to you about your guitar playing and your songwriting. Yeah, man, it's like the snowball thing. The more you practice, the better you get. The more you do, the more you reach out and you get, kind of one pretty cool artists come on and then, oh, hey man, I just had Jimmy Page on, and that, would you like to come? You know what I mean? Um, just be genuine. You are just, do your homework, which you do. So I don't think there's any magic bullet. Um, I have reached out to guys about coming on podcasts. You have no idea how many times, and they don't even respond. So, you try not to take it personally. Maybe they never even saw the email. They thought it was, junk email. Maybe they're not a Van Halen fan. So, but it's hard. It's like saying, hey, yeah, I'll go play all these gigs for years and, have 15 people in a club. Like I said, man, yeah, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to really live it and be, thick-skinned enough to deal with it. So, yeah, man, there will be a lot of rejections along the line, man, but you just keep doing it. It'll happen.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
Yeah,
so I'll let you know how Ukraine goes. I'll send you some videos. I'm not
yeah,
putting any
man.
music up on YouTube yet because I'm not good enough yet to perform on YouTube. Maybe I won't put on stuff on YouTube. I don't know. I wanna. We'll see how it goes.
Well,
But
so you're playing like in a club in the Ukraine or something, or
church bands, folk band.
that's great. So
Yeah.
are you going to shoot that? Are you going to video
No,
that?
I don't really put that on. I'll send some videos to you.
Oh, wow. I mean, that to me it has interest. I mean, how many guys have Ukrainian folk bands up? But that's me.
Yeah, no, it's Ukraine. I don't know. We'll see. I figure it out. I'm a bit shy as well, so
Oh man, trust me, I understand shy, but it's your thing.
sometimes I play the bass and guitar at the same gig, so I'll switch depending on the song. Because not everything needs an electric lead guitar. Or well, let's do another podcast some point in a few weeks or whatever like that. And really love speaking to you, Steve.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Nikos.
Thanks for your time.
Take care.
God bless.
Bye.